And I will call the meeting of the Design Review Committee to order as its Vice Chair filling in for our Chair, Heather Newsom today. Roll call.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Committee Member Baranek.
Here, still struggling with video, but I'm here.
Okay, Committee Member Van den Eyck.
Here.
And Vice Chairperson Funk.
Here.
And Schmidt and Newsom are absent today, so we have 3 present and 2 absent. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. I bet 50-50 on whether this this microphone works. So, okay, let's. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
It has been moved. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Emily. It's been moved and seconded. Can we do that by voice vote?
Yes.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Good. The agenda passes. It's now time for public comment. So this is an opportunity for anyone in the public who may be joining us or with or without membership in this particular group to bring before the group any matters that are under the committee's jurisdiction but which are not on our agenda for the day. Is there anyone wishing to make comment? And since there aren't a lot of us, you can either wave the manual raise hand method or use the raised hand function that you'll find at the bottom of the Zoom meeting. If you float your cursor down there, you'll see a little raise hand yellow sign, and you can click on that for attention.
I also just wanted to mention we have one person on the phone, and so if they wish to speak, they can press *9, and that will raise their hand for us to see as well.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that.
Sure.
We do have, I see we have other participants who are not showing up visually. So those of you who are not visible to us on the committee, please be sure to use that raise hand function or the *9 function to get attention.
And at this time, we do have 4 attendees, and I do not see anybody wishing to speak.
Thank you, Kelly. Going once, going twice, we'll close public comment. Thank you. Now it's time for our consent calendar. This is the opportunity to do things that are non-controversial, like the minutes from the last meeting, which in this case. But any member may pull and request that an item be withdrawn from that. Any requests? Seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Emily. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good. The consent agenda is approved. Now we'll move on to our development project review. This is item number 2 on our agenda, where we are doing a design review of an addition to a building at 5880 Ardella Avenue. Let me turn this over to whoever on the staff is going to lead this presentation.
Right.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Okay, perfect. So yes, this is an expansion of the Empire Apartments project at 5880 Ardea Road.
Is that Ardea or Ardilla?
It's always a debate. I'm going to call it Ardea just for fun, if no one minds.
Sounds great.
Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, here you can see the zoning map. The project is in red there in the high density residential zoning district, RMF 24. To the east, there's also high density residential, and then to the west is a residential single family zoning district, and then to the north there is Highway 101. Here's an aerial photo to just see the site a little bit better. You can see the existing L-shaped building there, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So a little bit about the project. The project, as you just saw, is currently developed with one multifamily building that includes 13 units with one manager's unit in it. The units are income restricted to low income, and the building right now contains 1 studio, 11 one-bedroom units, and 1 3-bedroom manager's unit. The building also includes laundry facilities. So the applicant is proposing an addition of a 2nd story to this existing building, which would have 19 units within the 2nd story. This would consist of 11 studio units and 8 one-bedroom units for a total of 32 units on the site. They're also proposing the addition of a new community building with a little bit of storage space, as well as a new courtyard. And then finally, they want to upgrade the parking lot to meet city standards, and then just move the trash enclosure to make way for these improvements, as well as a new fire truck turnaround. So to talk about the density a little bit, our zoning code allows for a maximum of 27 units based on the size of the property in the RMF 24 zone. The applicant can receive a density bonus from the state for designating at least 20% as affordable, which the whole project, as I mentioned before, is affordable. So with the density bonus, the maximum density they're allowed to have is 36 units, which, as I've mentioned, they have 32, which falls within this maximum. A conditional use permit is required for multifamily developments or 12 units or greater, so this project will move on to the Planning Commission. This project is considered legal non-conforming at this point because it was built prior to the conditional use permit requirement. So with their conditional use permit, they'll need to bring this project site into conformance with today's standards. So the existing building, it's interesting, it was actually a motel built in the 1960s, and then it was later converted into the apartments that you see today. So I've just included the existing site plan, which we can compare later to the proposed site plans. You can see they have kind of an L-shaped building with a little courtyard in the middle there on the right-hand side. They do have the gazebo that's to be removed, and that'll be replaced with the new courtyard. And then the parking lot will be expanded a little bit, which we'll see in a minute. So like I mentioned, they are adding a 2nd story to the building, which will increase the height from 9.5 feet tall to 22.5 feet tall. The 1st floor will continue to have the same 13 units and include the manager's unit and laundry facility, which will be upgraded a little bit, but keep basically their same footprints. And then the new 2nd story, as I mentioned, will have 19 new units. Since the project is 100% affordable, the state code allows for the applicant to request up to 4 concessions or exceptions to the city's requirements. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So here's the applicant's proposed site plan. You can see the configuration of the building is staying the same, that internal courtyard is staying the same. There are some changes to the parking lot, and then on the bottom left, you'll see there's a new trash enclosure, then a new courtyard, as well as a new community building there at the bottom. So because of the building's age and history, it does encompass a strong mid-century modern style. This can be seen in the simplicity of the clean lines with the flat roofs and the windows and the doors, as well as the walkway features. They have a faux rock veneer. The existing color palette is also really simple. It's a white or off-white with green accents, and then again, that stone veneer accent. So with the addition of the 2nd story, it will include slanted roof lines that slant toward the parking lot and toward that inner courtyard there. So they slant upwards and act as an overhang for the 2nd floor exterior walkway. And here's a little bit of a better look. This is as if you were standing kind of just as if you're about to go into the site right before the parking lot. looking at the building. So they're keeping that same really light gray wall with very muted green accents. The doors are this very modern style. They're black with the rectangular long window. They're also adding a new wood slatted screens, new windows, and then they're keeping that existing stone veneer along the walkway. And then the new community building matches the building with the same scheme and design. And just to mention, the trash enclosure also matches with the CMU block wall and then those green doors. So to talk a little bit about parking and access to the site, the existing parking lot contains 18 parking spaces. The applicant is proposing to remove 3 of these spaces and provide for a new fire truck turnaround, as well as add new accessible parking spaces. So the total would be 15 spaces. The state density bonus law does set a maximum parking ratio for projects that include a certain amount of affordable units. So per the state law, this project is required a maximum of 33 parking spaces, or the city can't require more than that based on the affordability. But the applicant is requesting a further reduction as a concession in accordance with the density bonus law we previously mentioned. So here's just a little chart looking at the total proposed units. Again, is 32. Our municipal code requires 56 parking spaces. The state requires 33 based on the density bonus laws. And then the applicant, again, is proposing 15 spaces. So it's a pretty great reduction from what's required. Just some things to mention. There is no on-street parking along Ardea, and the site is pretty steep, so it's difficult to access from the road on foot. According to the owner/operator, which is the Housing Authority of SLO or HASLO, many of the residents don't drive. The population is such that they really don't drive. So the current parking demand in the lot is low, which staff has been up there a few times and we've actually witnessed this. Usually there's about half of the existing parking spaces taken. During the Planning Commission review, we're going to suggest that the applicant provide a parking management plan that can just justify the low parking ratio that they're asking for. So because Atascadero was developed with limited neighborhood parking opportunities, the DRC should carefully consider and discuss this request. However, it's difficult for the city to deny a request like this because we'd have to provide substantial evidence and conduct a parking study in accordance with the state law. So moving on to landscaping, approximately 41% of the site will be landscaped, which is well above the 25% that's required by the municipal code. The municipal code also requires a minimum of 10% of parking areas need to be landscaped, as well as shade trees provided throughout. Trash enclosures are also to be landscaped around, and street trees are to be added along the street frontage, with the side yard setbacks also landscaped. The applicant, you'll see in a moment, they are proposing to add or make the existing landscaping a little bit nicer, but they are not meeting all of these requirements based on the existing layout of the building and the topography of the site. So to add these additional landscape requirements, more, you can see here, you can see the landscaping proposed. So things like landscaping around the trash enclosure would probably cut into the parking lot, or landscaping in the setbacks might reduce the parking or units. So based on this, staff is recommending approving the landscape plan as is. Moving on to the multifamily standards, the municipal code requires 10 cubic feet of enclosed storage per unit. Based on the number of units, this site is required to have 9,600 square feet of open space, which can be provided in one shared location, provided that no individual area is less than 1,000 square feet. That's per municipal code. And our code also requires 1 covered parking space per unit. So the applicant is proposing 1 bedroom closet per unit, so just a standard closet. A couple of the units, unit number 3, which is the bottom corner unit, and the manager's units do have a little bit more storage, but they don't meet that storage requirement in the code. They are adding a little bit more open space in addition to what they already have. They do have that existing courtyard area, as well as the downstairs residences do have little individual patio areas, and they're not proposing any covered parking. So again, based on the layout and topography of the site, the additional storage and open space would probably result in a loss of units because the units themselves are already pretty tight, or extensive grading because the site does, it goes up pretty far on one side and it goes down pretty far on the others. So those are just some things to consider with those concessions being requested. And then the city council recently directed staff to modify the code requirements about covered parking and potentially eliminate this requirement for smaller projects such as this. So that's something that's a discussion right now in the code update. So I put all of these elevations in case we wanted to talk about them a little bit more, but this top one is just looking straight at the site, not looking into the courtyard, and the bottom one there is you're able to see the whole building as if the front was cut off so you can see into that courtyard. This top one is just looking, you can't see the building from Ardea, but it is the Ardea side. And then the bottom one there is the back side of the building. And then here are just some floor plans of the first floor. And then the second floor, you can see the units are much smaller. And then the community building floor plan is pretty simple. And some photos from the site. This top one is looking at the apartments that's looking toward Ardea. So you can see they have their little individual areas behind that stone veneer. And then this top one, or this bottom one, is looking at the manager's unit and then into that little courtyard area. And then this top picture is the gazebo that's to be removed and replaced with the new courtyard area. And the bottom one is the area proposed for the new community building. So the discussion items for DRC are the architecture and design of the project, the parking and access, the landscape standards, and then the multifamily standards. And staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Mariah. Are there questions for staff?
I have one.
Go for it.
Mariah, does the landscape plan or any details regarding it identify a fencing plan of any kind? Is there fencing planned other than or what's currently shown around the individual outdoor spaces?
I don't believe there's fencing proposed. That's not shown on the plan. The applicant might be able to elaborate, but just to talk a little bit, can you see my cursor at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to elaborate a little bit more on the topography. So this side of the site, this property is raised pretty high with the house being a little bit set back, and then they have a fence here. So it's a pretty dramatic increase. This property, I believe, drops off. There's a big accessory building, it looks like right here for this property owner. And then on this side and then this side, it also drops off significantly to a residence down here and then to, or I guess I could look at the aerial, but anyway, and then to the church down here. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Understood.
Yeah, the site's pretty hidden already, so I don't know if fences, you know, would do too much.
Yeah, full disclosure, I am asking because I actually used to live in the small home immediately in front of and below this project, which I would say historically I felt like they were great neighbors. And I would agree with the reduced need for parking, but it did create quite a bit of foot traffic that at the time, at least, and this was a number of years ago, did use the neighboring parcel that belonged to the church as a thoroughfare, probably because the driveway was tough to traverse. So I just wanted to inquire if there was any intent to kind of direct that foot traffic either in a different way or to formalize that in any way. So, you know, it was maybe leading, but I think it's something to discuss. If you've discussed pedestrian access with the owners or designers at all, I'd be interested to hear those details as well.
Mhm. That is not something that we've discussed, but I know the applicant's here and they can probably talk about that a little bit more too.
Okay. And I should have, I should have asked at the outset for ex parte. And I will also disclose that I did a site visit yesterday and talked with the adult child of one of the residents who was visiting and supporting for a little bit. And Emily, you've noticed. Do you have any other ex parte?
I don't.
And Jeff, any ex parte? You're muted, Jeff.
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for staff? Let me ask a couple of them. Can you clarify what I noticed when I visited the site? Is it sort of perched halfway up a hill? Can you clarify what other properties would have a view of the back side of this property, of this building?
Sure. So based on my observation, like I said, this property over here, the house is set pretty far away, it looks like, and then they do have a large accessory structure. So, you know, from their property, if they're at the very back, I'm sure they could probably see the building, but they have their own structure that looks like it's blocking most of it. And then this property up above, I believe they sit a little bit higher and a little further back. So they might be able to see the top of the building, but I don't think it's going to be in their direct line of sight.
Thanks. That was my impression, is that the hillside was what would see the view.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question for staff. There's a fire truck turnaround. You know, that's quite a hairpin turn on that driveway going up. Can fire trucks actually get up there now?
So this is something that we've gone back and forth with quite a bit with our fire chief and the applicant. So they did provide this new fire access at the bottom along Ardea. So it's pretty steep. They do have to provide a non-skid surface on that, and then it's just going to be for fire access. But that's what they're going to use, and then this fire truck turnaround meets the requirements.
Okay, and how do trash trucks get up there?
They have an existing dumpster up there, so I guess they make it work, but I'm not exactly sure about the details of that.
Good question for the applicant. He's working now. It's going to expand its use, but yeah, the driveway has been definitely the center of a lot of discussion. You know, as staff, we've all been out there. We've maneuvered this hairpin turn and this steep grade, and it's definitely something that came up in all of our minds in terms of access, trash, fire service. So certainly a good topic to make sure we have adequately addressed.
Okay, and there's probably a question for the applicant, but are they planning on putting, when they upgrade the manager's unit, are they going to put solar on that roof? That's the one part of the structure where that would probably be useful, and that would also then allow for charging an electric vehicle if and future residents have those vehicles.
Yeah, that would be a good question for the applicant.
Okay.
I don't know that the building code mandates that on that, since it's not a new single family, but that's an interesting question. That's the one thing that we would definitely want to encourage if that's an option on that. That's an interesting one. Have we talked to building about that, Mariah? Whether that can be, is the building code going to trigger that because of this addition? Or is it just, it's existing building? So I know new development, new buildings trigger.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think the building department mentioned that, but
And I think it's because it's an addition and remodel that it may be exempt, but if it's a discretionary project that requires a conditional use permit, if there's a nexus, we could require that as a condition, but also we should ask the applicant to see if they have a plan to do that anyway. But it hasn't come up. That topic has not come up.
Okay. I'm always looking to see if people are thinking about that.
Yes.
And then last on my list, sound. To what extent is there expectation that the addition of a second story and additional residence in that, above there would change the sound that spreads out into the property that's roughly above the backside of the existing structure, or properties in the neighborhood?
so the applicant didn't provide any kind of sound study. I'm not exactly sure. It's my understanding, and maybe Emily can talk about this a little bit, but I believe they're pretty quiet neighbors just based on my observation and what I've heard, but I'm not exactly sure about that.
Okay, yeah, certainly on my site visit, it was quiet, and we'll ask the applicant to clarify the nature of the current residence and what's going to happen to the current residence while this structure is being modified.
That's a good question for the applicant.
Okay, any other questions of staff?
Mariah, one of the things in the conditions was that they were going to update their parking lot to current city standards. What did that mean?
So I believe they're accessible spaces. I don't think they meet the current standards for accessibility. And then it looked like the parking lot was pretty narrow. So they are widening it a little bit, probably to allow for a little more backup room, as well as this walkway, and then improving their accessible spaces, as well as adding this city code fire truck turnaround.
Okay, all right. So the number of parking spaces will remain the same.
So the parking spaces will be decreased a little bit. I counted 18 there, and so they will now have 15.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a representative of the applicant that I could recognize to address questions at this time? I saw somebody from Haslo on the phone.
I did, and if they could use their raise hand function to let me know who is speaking on behalf of the project, that would be helpful.
So it's Adriana.
There you go.
And then let me just note that after we have finished questions of the applicant, that we will open it for public comment. And I see we have at least one hand raised for public comment.
Hi, this is Adriana. I have a small presentation. I think Mariah did a great job. I'm more than happy to run through it. If I don't know if I'm allowed to share.
Can we allow her to share her presentation, Kelly?
I am checking right now. Let me see. I think I can promote her to a panelist for now.
That would be helpful.
Adriana, are you able to share now?
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I'm selecting. So here's thank you, Mariah, for summarizing that. I think she did a great job, and I don't have too much to add. Just kind of reiterating some of it. And I will say Ardea as well, just so we're on the same page. Here's an aerial of the property, and then I did a street view, so you can see that it's up there, and it's fairly hidden on that hill. And this is going to be 100% affordable for rent apartments. It's owned by Haslo and managed by Haslo. It's located close to El Camino and Traffic Way. Obviously, it's on the other side of 101. And we're adding a second story over the entire existing 13-unit building. This will increase the number of units from 13 to 32. And then we're also adding the community building for residents. Per state density bonus law, we're allowed up to 4 incentives or concessions. And we are requesting the following as mentioned: the reduced parking and reduced indoor storage. This was same as Mariah showed the existing site plan. And as you, just to touch on the parking again, it was very close to the existing, those low rock walls. And then you have some parking stalls that were, I don't know if they were compact or more than compact. And so in order for us to get stalls that comply plus accessible stalls, we lost a few. This is just showing the second story. It will be covering the entire existing structure, including a walkway that does project out slightly. The new community building, and I believe the existing gazebo that was there before was underutilized, and so this was kind of a way to revitalize that corner and give back to the residents. Then back to the flat work here. So we had to add an accessible aisle along because right now you have all these private entries in front of the units, but you don't have a walkway unless you go out into the parking lot to walk by. And so we've pushed the parking out for that, but also to get backup clearance. And then as Mariah mentioned, all these stalls obviously went away to provide an adequate size trash enclosure and the needed turnaround for fire. I'm sure trash would appreciate that as well. I'm not sure how trash accessed it before, to be honest with you. But I do know they did have a bin up there, and so we're hopeful that this is night and day from what they had before. And then, yes, we will have a fire access on here. I don't know if there's an opportunity to allow trash to also use that. That might be the best move to eliminate having to do that hairpin turn. And this is also being regraded because it's very steep. And so we will have some retaining around this area in particular. The elevations, keeping in with what is there, just kind of giving it a little facelift, but same mid-century modern. And I know there are a lot of questions asked, so I don't know where to start. And I believe Mike Burke is also on the line from Haslo and can answer any operational questions.
Thank you, Adriana. The questions included ones about, were there any changes in pedestrian access?
I think, well, one thing is that the current driveway will be regraded to allow for fire access because fire can't have it be as steep as it currently is. And so I know that was a deterrent for a lot of people to walk. And so that will be regraded. I don't believe there is any fencing or anything like that. I can let Mike speak on that. But
Okay, and I'm looking, I didn't make notes about all the questions that were open. Sound implications, any sense of what changes would be made in sound that goes up to nearby properties, including the one above the
So I believe the home that's up on the hill on this side is more than 20 feet above, looking at that grading plan. And so it's pretty far up there. And we're proposing that this would be, you know, max to the top of this eave is 22.5 feet. So, I mean, they're well above this property. And if anything, I think we're adding a buffer to any noise in the courtyard areas and things like that.
Okay. Any other questions that I missed that you want to pose to the applicant at this time? Emily, Jeff? I can't see Emily now.
None for me.
Okay. Emily, did we get your?
Yeah, just, yeah, overall, like site improvement, security, and pedestrian access questions, I think are.
Can you characterize the folks who are living here now and who you would expect to are these second floor? I assume these are going to be walk-up apartments?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So we're adding residents who are capable of walking to second floor units. To what extent do you continue? What do you see this being like in terms of age and physical capacity and vehicle ownership?
I'll let Mike chime in on that. I only know a little bit about the current residents, so I'll let Mike's more well-versed in who will be. I hope he's on here, or do you have to allow him to speak? I'm not sure.
I see Mike.
Can you guys hear me?
Thank you, Mike.
Yes. I've got Scott Smith with me as well. He's the executive director of Hasla, so he can chime in. So thank you, Mariah and Adriana, for your presentations. I know the Housing Authority is excited to, propose another 19 units of affordable housing to the city of Atascadero. To give a little backstory on this site, Hasla's affiliate, which is San Luis Obispo Nonprofit Housing Corporation, purchased the motel in 1991 and through a deed restriction agreed to rent the units to low-income people at this site. Minor improvements were completed in 1991 as part of the conversion from the motel to the apartments, but little has been done since then. And so as you guys have seen from visiting the site, it's in need of renovation. And we believe the site is underutilized, and therefore these added units not only increase the supply of affordable housing in the city, but also bring the investment into the site required to modernize those existing units, provide some community space like Adriana mentioned, and kind of obviously upgrade the life and safety elements of the site, the fire truck turnaround that we talked about, and bringing the access up to the site that we would expect in a modern community. So all of those things kind of dovetail into our request to increase the density here. To answer some of the questions earlier, yes, we're going to propose solar on this project. It's something the Housing Authority does on all of our projects, especially in the North County. So we'll be doing that. Pedestrian access, we can work with our housing management team to kind of control that. I was not aware of the existing traffic patterns, and so we will get with them and try to figure out a way to get them to utilize the new driveway to stay out of the church's lot. And in terms of security, yeah, we can look at fencing. As was alluded to, the site's kind of isolated up there, and the topography's lending itself as a kind of secure area by itself. So we'll look at adding fencing where appropriate. To add to the conversation about the population living there, these are special needs tenants that we have there. 3 of the units are leased to Transitions Mental Health. And so the financing that we will apply for this project will also still fall within the bucket of special needs, so to speak. So these will be individuals who are capable of living on their own. There'll be case management service, supportive services on site. And we expect to kind of keep that same population here on site and possibly even expand our team of services at this location. But if Scott wants to speak more to that, he can. But I will be here to answer any further questions.
Thank you very much. Let me first ask Emily and Jeff, if either of you have questions that you want to ask.
No, I think I've
No.
communicated mine.
The main thing I'm wrestling with is adding units and decreasing parking. And I did notice, and confirm what the staff had reported, that the parking I was up there at 6:30 at night, and there were a few cars there, but it certainly wasn't more than half full. So if this is working to the same target audience that has a very low rate of vehicle ownership, that can be managed. It is within easy walking distance of a lot of downtown amenities. It's within easy walking distance of the Echo Meal program for congregate meals. And it's a workable walking distance to grocery stores, depending on how mobile you are. So if it doesn't have a lot of folks who are restricted by physical capacity and need to drive in order to get places, then we might be able to manage that, the parking. Question for staff. Is this something, as part of the CUP, can Planning Commission place a requirement on the project that they prioritize or manage the selection criteria for residents so that they don't have more vehicles owned than they have spaces?
They can, yeah, we can require that they provide a parking management plan that includes components such as that. And I think given there's a pure nexus to that kind of a condition, the fact that there is going to be a parking deficit, even though we are close to downtown services and transit, that still a parking management plan is warranted, which includes, looking at prioritizing tenants based on whether they own a car or will have a car and things like that. So I think that is appropriate, good discussion to have with the applicant, but certainly could be added as a condition so that they have these provisions built in to the project.
Sure. And if they're prioritizing residents who are not licensed drivers, that might solve a fair amount of the problem, or at least, I'm not prioritizing that for enough units. You're good. Could you also, Michael, clarify what's happening to the residents of the existing residents during the process of while these upgrades are being performed, and how long that'll take?
Sure. Yeah, so we anticipate a build like this could be anywhere from 12 to 14 months. What we would propose is trying to utilize our existing housing stock in the area to maybe relocate our tenants there. We've recently been doing a full 70 unit renovation project in San Luis Obispo with existing tenants, and we've kind of been moving them around, so to speak, for periods of time. Some of them we've housed for 6 months, some of them we've found in our own portfolio, and then some of them we found landlords that we can work with to house them while we renovate. So we will definitely, there's a lot of rules regarding how to manage the tenants during the renovation process, but we're pretty well versed in that. So we will just keep them off-site until we're ready to bring them back in. But we expect it to be 12 to 14 months.
And will existing residents have priority for the units once they are renovated?
Yeah, I don't anticipate anybody will be displaced from the site, but I will defer to Scott on that one.
Okay. And a question for Scott, since this is our second project from Haslow recently, of the same character. We're looking to use the state density bonus requirements to expand capacity in an existing site and use that as an opportunity to upgrade the site, the current units. Is it fair to assume that Haslo is going through a process of identifying sites that are suitable for that, given the new state laws, and working through where those upgrades can happen?
Good afternoon. This is Scott Smith. I'm the executive director at Haslo, and appreciate you setting aside the time this afternoon to hear this project. This is it is accurate to say we're looking at older properties that maybe were developed many decades ago in a very different environment, and looking at possibilities to try to sort of reduce the extremely high demand for affordable rentals by doing some infill on those sites that are able to handle it. And this is one site that we thought could really fairly easily accommodate that. And like you has been discussed, parking is just a great determiner on so many things as far as what you can really manage to fit on a site in the way of housing units. But it sounds like many of you, if not all of you, have been to the site, and one of you actually having lived close to this location, and it is very quiet, very peaceful typically, and it is primarily a special needs population that lives there right now. So we would see it as being pretty much an expansion of that. We have very long waiting lists for all of our properties. So so we would see this as meeting that really important unmet need. But we would want to work with you on, because we do want to be good neighbors. So on working together to come up with an acceptable parking management plan. And I just, one thing we did at a fairly recent project, it's housing for veterans, and it's not that different from this property in the sense that it's all one-bedroom apartments, fairly small one-bedroom apartments and studios, and that got a similar parking reduction, as I recall. And what we did in that case that turned out to be really successful is we purchased brand new bicycles for every tenant that's there, and it also that property happens to be in the city of San Luis Obispo, but it also is, like this property, is fairly close to the downtown and those kinds of amenities. So I could see that as also being something that could fit into a property like this quite well, and it has worked really well at our veterans project as well. So anyway, any other questions? I probably missed something, I'm sure, but we're here to dialogue with you and to try to make this the best project it can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Seeing none, I would then like to take this opportunity to open public comment. And I see Max Zappis has a hand raised. So if we can unmute or bring him in or do whatever it is to let him address us at this time. Max, or are you?
You there? Yeah.
Are you there?
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Here we go. Just got it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Looks like a great project. My name is Max Zappis. I live right down below at 5930 Ardea. I think the project looks great. I think it's really gonna hit a need that's definitely here. there's just a couple things that I was curious about. One is the frontage improvements, the walkability out front. It's on kind of a corner, and people go kind of fast around that. I know one of the residents up above there is even blind or partially blind, and she has to cross that street, and it's really dangerous. She runs across. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I think maybe a sidewalk or you know, some consideration for the frontage or the pedestrian access for them on Ardea. And then the second thing is the sewer situation and kind of upgrading all the utilities for the site. I just want to make sure that you know, repairs be made to kind of that critical infrastructure. I know they've had issues in the past with sewer backing up to sewer cleanouts and things like that. And it overflows onto my property. So just hoping that gets taken care of too. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments and the immediate local perspective. Can anyone represent the applicant comment on those issues with regard to the sewer utilities and also the situation for sidewalk or and crossing on that on Ardea? Yeah. I'm guessing that the sidewalk, the area where you want a sidewalk down below is not necessarily owned by this applicant. And so.
Yeah, typically frontage improvements are required for every single project.
Yeah, that's correct. And especially in a multifamily zone. So when this goes to the planning commission, that is something that will have to be considered. Do we have any thoughts on that already, Mariah? Or we'll have the applicant speak as well. But this is going to go to planning commission. They are responsible for the driveway improvements. Do we know yet if a sidewalk is included in that?
It was not included on the plans, and we haven't talked about it with our public works department. So we will bring that up with them and talk about it.
Okay, that sounds like a critical need, especially with a project with, you know, our multifamily areas typically do require sidewalks as they develop out. It seems like a project that would trigger that. It seems like there's a direct need and nexus. Certainly would be a good, very, very important discussion topic to have as we move forward.
Great. And any comments on the sewer capacity and making sure that water and sewer are properly sized and upgraded for this?
It looks like the applicant wants to speak now, Mr. Burke.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to that. It's our intention to upgrade all of the utilities that service this site. So we'll be looking to not have sewer backup on Max's property anymore.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Looks like a great project. I think you guys will be successful there. That's awesome.
Great. Thank you. And I see Janet Miller is also requesting a chance to speak. So Janet, you are here on.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My question is, I am in apartment K, and I was wondering how much yardage will be reduced out of my existing area in front there due to the stairway leading to the second floor proposal.
Okay. And do you have any, well, let me gather all your questions and comments, and then we'll ask the applicant to respond to them. Anything else that you would like to comment or about the where you live or the proposed changes?
I would like to say that I think that leveling down out somehow that grade going down the hill for some of us who do once in a while walk it is an excellent thing to do because it's very dangerous.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so would someone from the applicant, Michael or Scott or Adriana, want to?
I'm not sure which unit is your unit. I do know that the stairs do start kind of at the T-shape low wall here. And so that specific unit would lose about 3.5 feet in depth for that stair to start.
Okay, thanks for answering that. I appreciate it.
And would residents who, if that's, her unit and she wants to look at a different unit, would she have would residents be considered for, have a chance to wait on particular units that they might like if they wanted to switch to one of the upstairs units that might be larger or some other option at that point? That's, Michael, you want to speak to that?
Sure, I can speak to that. Our plan is to have the existing residents return, and we can find the right, they're going to have the first choice, I believe, to which unit types they want. So we will proceed along those lines.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Scott, I see your hand up. Would you like?
I'm sorry. I'm okay. I was just, I wasn't sure if I was still muted or not, so I raised my hand just to respond to that last question, but I didn't just jump in because I thought I was probably still on mute. So I think I'm good, but also happy to answer any more questions. Okay.
Are there any other questions? And this is, we get to be more casual in design review, so it's not like you have the 3-minute timer at council and beep, you're off. If people who commented, if Janet or if you have other questions or comments, or anyone else wishes to, round 2 is okay. I'm not seeing any further hands raised. So I think let me then bring this back to the committee for discussion. Let me throw this out for thoughts from the other 2 of you who are here today.
Yeah, I think that if we can work out an agreement with the applicant for some kind of a memorandum of understanding for the parking, that's going to be the most critical issue. I think, I've had several friends that have lived in units similar to this who couldn't drive. So I can see why, they wouldn't need as many spaces. I think that's probably my most pressing thing is making sure that people that do live there have the opportunity to park their car there, or else something else is provided for them.
Very good. Anything else that you want to make sure gets addressed when this goes to planning commission?
Also, I did notice, I was looking at the aerial map after Adriana, or no, who was it? Somebody talked about the access to the next property over, and I did see that there was a well-worn pathway there. So I think that would be, whether or not that's just talking to the residents or putting an actual fencing there in between that property and the church property would probably be important to do that.
Yeah, or potentially getting some kind of an easement, and making that an actual functioning pathway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'd want it to be safe too. So it's not a gentle slope. So maybe if there was an agreement, they could have stairs or some ADA accessible paths or something there. I don't know. So.
Okay, and Emily, your thoughts?
I think it's a great project. I fully support additional low-income housing, especially in that location. I love that it's accessible to downtown. I think it's a great project. I'd like to see in exchange for supporting the reduction in parking spaces, a focus on pedestrian accessibility, either, or I should say both through improvements to the primary driveway access and an agreed upon parking management plan that takes into account my concern for the residents currently accessing or inclined to access in the future the church parking lot through that rather steep and unimproved access point. Not necessarily because either when I was there, or maybe Max can speak to it now, that it was a problem. It just is not an improved access, and it was concerning to me. So in one way or another, I'd like the parking management plan and the site plan to prioritize pedestrian access.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd concur in that. I think that managing the parking is going to be key to this working, because there is no offsite parking access. And it's not fair to make the back parking lot of St. William's the supplemental parking lot for this space. But it also seems like that can be managed by the selection of prioritization of residents who don't drive or who don't own vehicles and aren't aspiring to own vehicles. At least enough such residents, and it seems like there's plenty of folks who are desperately needing affordable housing who are in that category. So with a good, if we see a good management plan for that and thoughtful management for pedestrian action, including the sidewalk or frontage access concerns for pedestrian safety. I mean, this is, if you're going to be walking down that driveway, there needs to be safe access from the driveway up to the corner there, and for people to safely get, so that they can head off into downtown and enjoy the amenities of our community. And that seems to me to be the key thing. I'm comfortable with the second story. I asked about sound, but my guess is, given its siting up on the hill, that that it's probably manageable without anything else happening, and that you're going to have a relatively quiet resident population. It seems to make sense. And that's being shaped by the parking. So, and by maintaining the existing character of the community. My impression is the very stable community of residents. And that makes for a good neighborhood and a good addition to what we have in Atascadero. Pleased to hear about solar. And let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here. And I want to make sure that it does meet the requirements of the fire department for them being able to access it safely and be able to help second floor residents access that safely. Okay, our action here is to review the proposed design and direct the applicant to make any modifications to the site or building design as necessary. Do we need to be more formal in our recommendations so that the planning, when this goes to planning committee, they know whether or not these concerns have been addressed?
Yeah, go ahead, Mariah.
I was just going to say, basically, if you could touch on the overall architecture, just confirm that you like their proposal. I've certainly written down all of the notes about the parking and what you want to see with that, pedestrian accessibility. So if there's things that you think are just great about the project, if you wouldn't mind just verifying that, or things that you think should change about the appearance or landscaping or anything like that, make note of that as well, and then we can bring that forward.
Okay. Jeff, you want to weigh in on any of that?
I don't have any issues that I saw with it. Actually, it's pretty hidden site, so I agree with the planning's recommendation to leave the planting the way that was proposed. As far as the architecture goes, I think it fits with that style. I don't see any issues there. My main issues are parking and the access. So as far as the overall site design, I don't have any issues with it.
And Emily?
I feel similarly. I like that they're continuing with the, mid-century kind of 60s thing that it's already got going. It adds to the eclectic nature of the town. And I think the community room's a great addition. I think the residents would really enjoy that. Like I said before, my primary concerns are just about parking and access. Otherwise, I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I like this project. I think that continuing with the same architectural theme and just making it look nice, making it look current. The refreshing all of that will help it. I saw a lot of pride of ownership or pride of residence in the space in my brief visit. So I think that people are really enjoying living in this little community, and expanding that will be very constructive for us. If this were sited differently, I'd be concerned about the very, very plain, almost industrial looking backside, but nobody's going to see that. It sticks up next to a hill. You have to work to see the backside of this project. So I don't think it's that any further investment in the backside of the project is needed, that they should keep, that it's well designed for the lovely little spot that it's in. And
then, I'm sorry, just to touch on a few more things. They are requesting a couple concessions that I don't think we've specifically talked about to the storage requirements. I think I said in the presentation it requires 10 square feet of storage, but it's actually 100 square feet, and that's not including closets. So they're not meeting that requirement. They're requesting an exception. Every unit basically just has their own little, bedroom closet. And then they're requesting a concession to the amount of open space, which might be difficult based on the topography and existing building. But if you could just maybe mention your thoughts on those.
Sure. Emily, you want to give thoughts on those?
It seems to me that these housing authority projects are really well managed. I think that my concern with regard to storage is usually about the things that end up kind of spilling over units or out of units that don't have enough storage. I'd like to think that the housing authority can manage that need, either through, tenant selection or, lease and rental agreements. I don't have much of a concern for that. In my experience, the little that I saw, the site up there, it seemed well managed and well organized. And sorry, what was the second item?
The reduction of open space.
I also think that, again, given the site topography, as you mentioned, that's difficult to address, and they've done what they can with it. The courtyard and the community building, I think, provide enough amenities, I'd like to think. I don't have much of a concern there either.
And Jeff, any thoughts on those 2 points?
Mariah, was that the storage, was that 100 square feet per unit that was required?
Yes, 100 square feet.
That seemed a lot for a studio.
Yeah.
So I have no objections to approving their request for that, and also considering the site constraints, I also think that the open space requirement, we can waive that as well.
Yeah, and I share the thoughts of my fellow members. I think that with for this site, with the focus that the resident community, the tenant community that you're looking for, that the applicant has described, that seems that we can that the storage thing can be managed. And there are a lot of trees around the site. You know, it's up on a hill. It's a lovely sort of, it feels like a little park spot there, and naturally. So the fact that those are not necessarily on this particular site doesn't mean that you're in a bare naked environment. I think it's a very pleasant, that it does fine that way. And I'm comfortable that in not requiring any additional landscapes and letting that one be one of the, giving them whatever the formal term is, giving them a pass on those requirements. Because I think that there's only so much you can do with that site. And they've done basically what they can.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, on the trash enclosure, I forgot to mention that. Consider what if there's, you know, opportunity for trellising or something else that would make sure that the trash enclosure, which opens out to the front and therefore is fronting onto the street, just to make sure that that's not visible from the street, in an obvious way. I don't think it'll be an issue, but consider that you might have, you know, a little fencing or trellising where you have, in the visual image we see here, where there's that tree, maybe you have, you know, the carrying along the line there a little bit.
Okay.
So that there's consider visual screening of the trash enclosure, and whether that's, but also keep in mind that, you know, that may be a moot point, that may not actually be visible from the street regardless. So take the thought for what it's worth, and address whether that is even a relevant consideration given the site, so that when it goes to planning, at least you've thought about that. Jeff, anything else, you know, when this is going to come to your desk next from Planning Commission, anything else that you want to see addressed?
Well, I'm sure that Public Works will have a chance to review it before it gets to the Planning Commission, put their conditions in there. I'm really interested to see what they will do as far as the frontage improvements. It looks like the slope on their side of Ardea is very steep, so I don't know how they'd fit a sidewalk in there without significant retaining walls, maybe some impacts on the trees, but I'll be interested to see what what Public Works comes up with regarding both that entrance and the frontage improvements.
Yeah, and I'm particularly concerned with what happens when people get down to the street level.
Yeah,
whether they can you know, get to the corner safely and cross Ardea safely in someplace. I mean, there's a limit to how much can be done with that, but at least let's address it.
Yeah.
Okay. Mariah, Phil, anything else that we need to cover?
I think we got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for that report, and thanks to the applicant for bringing forward this project. Now, there is in our community and in our county an urgent need for these kinds of affordable student units in communities that work. You know, and a development like this is a little community. And so I'm really pleased to see this coming forward with thought and care. And I'm confident that the applicant will address those things as needed as it heads on through to the Planning Commission for its CUP.
Thank you guys for letting us present. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So should we now, are there any committee member comments and reports? Jeff, Emily, anybody have anything? And I don't have anything to report, and it looks like I don't Oh, there's Emily. Okay, I keep losing you.
Still here.
Anything you want to comment on or report on?
No.
Okay. Director Dunsmore, do you have any report that you would like to offer at this time?
Yes, briefly. I do want to say that the project that we saw today was timely in advance of our discussion that we're having tonight with the City Council and Planning Commission, which is a discussion about affordable housing policy that's going to start at 6 o'clock tonight. Very important discussion that is going to lead the charge in terms of us implementing our housing element policy in terms of how we determine our community wants to actually adopt some inclusionary housing policies or ordinance that we can utilize to create more of this affordable housing. So good, timely discussion. That's happening tonight. I also do want to let you know we did have a hearing scheduled for March 25th, but I don't believe we have a complete application yet from the applicant on that project to move forward. That's the Dove Creek project that you've seen before. There, the vacant lot at Dove Creek at the corner of Santa Barbara and El Camino. They are still working on that. That same applicant team is also working on what's called Del Rio Ranch, which is the property at the south east corner of Del Rio and El Camino Real. There once was a large retail store planned for that site. I won't say the name. But now that's going to be a resort site, and they've been working on that project as well. So that's been taking a lot of their time, and that one's going to be proceeding towards the City Council for an authorization as to whether they can process an amendment to the general plan and specific plan. And then that one will come back to DRC again at a later date. But I think our next hearing that was going to be on the 25th, I think we're probably going to not be able to get there. I don't think, right, Kelly? We don't have the stuff we need from Dove Creek yet from the applicant team. So I don't have a specific calendared next meeting for DRC, but if you have any questions for me about other development that's happening or anything else, I'd be happy to answer that now.
I know we're limited in how many general plan amendments we can consider, and we usually have a timing for those. Yes. How does the Dove Creek Ranch fit in with that timing, and why do they need a GPA in the first place?
So the Dove Creek one is really not a general plan amendment because they're not proposing to change the general plan map. They are basically, we have one chart in our general plan that talks about the number of housing units that we anticipated on this site. They're wanting to change that number of units. Is it really a general plan amendment? That's questionable. We'll have that discussion. Back to Del Rio Ranch, which is the former Walmart site, they do want to change the general plan map a little bit there because they want to shift the direction of where the residential was once envisioned to be at the back of the site instead of being on the side of the site, and they want to expand it slightly. So technically we have to amend the general plan there. So that's going to be subject to the strict application timing and authorization requirements. The primary reason of bringing the Dove Creek one back to that one before to the City Council is because it's a project of significant magnitude as well. It has significant neighborhood input. And, you know, technically, I suppose it could be called a general plan amendment because of that one little chart about residential density. So that was our determination in bringing that to council for authorization.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, that's it for me.
Hey, Phil, what is the developments going down on El Camino near La Costa? There's a little subdivision or something under construction right now.
Near La Costa, you said?
Yeah.
That one's the Hartburg multifamily, small lot attached, single family, small lot cottages, and then an apartment in the back.
Oh, okay, across from the state hospital property over there on the property between El Camino and the freeway. Yeah, yeah, that's the housing project known as Hartburg. Actually, it has a different name now, doesn't it, Kelly? It used to be Hartburg, but now it's called.
Yeah, I think they call it 10850.
10850. Yeah. A lot of development happening. You think about that one, you think about Emerald Ridge that's happening, we think about the Principal project on the south end, we look at Dove Creek, we look at Del Rio Ridge, and we're going to be getting an application soon for the Barrel Creek project, which is also going to include housing. A lot going on, a lot of big projects that are going to take a lot of time.
What's our sense on the Barrel Creek in terms of where it is? I know they've been back doing some revisions and things.
Yes, they've changed the scope of their project. They're working on an actual complete application now. So right now they're in a pre-application. They got the authorization by council. They're working on a complete application. They say they're going to submit that within the next few weeks. It has been changed in scale a little bit. They've reduced the number of residential units down dramatically. And they've changed the commercial a little bit to try and make it meet the traffic needs of that location and try and get it to fit some of the environmental conditions that we're going to have to deal with in terms of vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions and those environmental issues. So, and they're also working with traffic engineers to work with that side of Del Rio Road to make that project work. So we're anxious to see what that is. We haven't seen the plan yet ourselves. We know that they've given us a description where they've told us generally where they're going. And so we're anticipating seeing that soon and seeing how that looks. And then we'll start a process of bringing that forward for review.
Okay. Let me check the screens here and see if anybody else is, anybody else have questions for Director Dunsmore? Seeing none, I think we will adjourn to call. Wait, before we adjourn, did we resolve this as a standard meeting time for the
I
committee?
believe we did. If that works for everyone, I think we're there.
Okay, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and hopefully it will be something good for our chair who's not able to be with us today. So.
Yes.
Okay, then we stand adjourned to the call of the chair. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.